Good evening, and thank you for joining me on the second official episode of Rolling Credits, an uninventive series of videos where I break down all the games I have rolled credits on in the past 3 months. My name is Theo. Don't call me Ted. This quarter, I played a wide variety of games, but the ones I actually saw to the end are a bit less than last time. This may be a good time to admit that in my last video, I actually got a head start by a couple of weeks, allowing for a bit more time to push through a couple extra titles. I'm not going to harp on it though. I had a blast playing through most of these and managed to roll credits on 4 of them, some of my absolute favorites too. It's a pleasure to have these games documented here. With that being said, I do not consider this to be a review, and thus there will be no score for any of the games featured in this video. This is not a spoil-free environment. Star Wars: The Force Unleashed. I like to think of myself as a pretty big Star Wars fan. I've seen most of the movies and played the Battlefront games on the PS2 religiously. I even read a couple of the EU books, both pre and post Disney. The Force Unleashed, however, I have never even played, yet alone beaten it. I've owned it since 2015, and I suppose it was finally time. As a person that has played The Force Unleashed in 2024, I feel like it didn't age very well. Controls are solid with some cool combos on offer, but the age of the game came with dated techniques that harshly limited the fluidity of the game. Things like long parry animations and slow recovery times when getting knocked back. The camera was also a bit of a challenge at times. I have to say though, considering I had to lower the difficulty to easy about halfway through the game, it's extremely likely that I'm simply bad at the game. A run through on New Game Plus could give me a few more hours to familiarize myself with the combat and max out the powers to see the full potential of Starkiller's abilities. I also have yet to cover the DLC for the game. I plan on playing it, I don't know when. Maybe if I could finish Mafia, I could find time for those. With all this negativity and bad gameplay out on the table, which I want to note, I never said I was good at every game I play. I have to say that this is still a Star Wars game that we're talking about, and I cannot gloss over how much I love this game. At least once per level, I found myself blown away by something. I did genuinely not enjoy a lot of the game, but the times I did enjoy it almost made up for every complaint I have for it. Star Wars is awesome, and Starkiller is a great character, canon or not. The Bookwalker. The Bookwalker really kept my attention since the day I saw its announcement trailer. I picked it up day one, disregarding anything being said about it. I cared about nothing more than the concept of physically entering a book to interact with the world within. I'm kind of a fan of artsy games, which I suppose people would consider this. The Bookwalker is broken up between 2 different gameplay styles. The overworld, where you play in first person, is where the core of the story lies, but where the least amount of gameplay actually takes place. Through letters, phone calls, and faceless conversations with neighbors, it becomes clear pretty quickly that you are playing as a struggling writer that has been sentenced to 30 years with no writing. In a world seemingly run by the writer's police, this comes across as an unimaginably long and serious sentence. In fact, it's the longest sentence anyone you encounter has ever heard of. In an attempt to shorten your 30-year sentence, you're asked to go into other people's books illegitimately to steal legendary artifacts to bring back to this mysterious client over the phone. This is where the main gameplay loop comes in. The actual gameplay, while inside the books, is rather simple. Point and click to walk around and interact with the world through text boxes. There's also turn-based combat that is decently fun, but not complex whatsoever. This entire time, you're accompanied by a disembodied voice in a little metal cage. You can't remember his name, but he has a complete insight into the entire book that you're adventuring through. He can be spoken to whenever, He gives you vague spoiler-free hints on how to do things. Outside of that, he's kind of your only buddy throughout the entire adventure. The books you go into are very cool as well. Some unique twists on classic stories I'd assume everyone knows. Some are more enjoyable than others for sure. Not every level was a blast. The ones I did enjoy, however, I found to be quite well done. Take the Black River Drifters, for example. This book, at its core, is Knights of the Round Table, searching for their King Arthur to pull Excalibur from the stone. The game twists it slightly by putting it in space and placing it on a ship that's controlled by an AI who decides if you're worthy or not to even attempt to claim the sword. The ship is powered by faith, which is harvested from the already existing Knights of the Round Table, who are in these Master Chief style suspension tubes. After experiencing everything, I've come to appreciate the title of the book too, The Black River Drifters. The Unfinished Swan. Unlike The Bookwalker, I played The Unfinished Swan 12 years ago as a strapping young lad. Similar to The Bookwalker, however, I was sold from the second I watched the first trailer. I remember saying the words, "I don't care how much it costs. I will buy it day one." From what I remember, it was only 10 or 15 bucks, which was average for small indie games at the time. The game itself is pretty short. I played the entire thing in a single 2-hour session. The short run of the game is used to an advantage though. The ideas it shifts through really shine confined to the short sections that they're a part of. The story follows a little boy named Monroe, who was orphaned. He took a painting of a swan that his mother made to the orphanage with him. The swan escaped its frame one night, and Monroe decided to go catch it. That's kind of it. The swan leads you through a magical kingdom where you learn about the king and his problem trying to please his subjects. It's presented like a children's storybook with occasional excerpts from a narrator you never meet. These both progress the story and foreshadow the areas you're about to enter. I always credited this game for its unique gameplay and whimsical artistic direction. However, playing this game as an adult, I definitely picked up on a couple of darker themes I never noticed before. I can't say they're necessarily that deep, but I'd say I was a lot more oblivious back then, and just never put it together until now. There was a turning point in the story where the king went from scrambling around trying to please every request of his subjects to actively going against them. He started flooding the streets to keep them clean, eventually driving everyone away from his kingdom. He receded to his private island where he painted himself a wife because no existing person was worth his time. The Unfinished Swan is one of my favorite games, and it was just a great feeling going back to it after all these years. Borderlands. I didn't always like Borderlands as much as I do today. When I first played it, I rented Borderlands from Gamefly. Hated it. I started a solo game as Mordecai, and I didn't make it much further than 9 toes before sending the envelope back in the mail. I just didn't understand what the point of the game was. A few years later, in high school, I met some friends that got me to play it with them. After some guidance through the early levels, I came to realize just how fun the game can be. We all shared the same Game of the Year disc to get the DLC. From there, we proceeded to spend the next couple of weeks going through everything in this game. Over a decade later, I'm back playing it with a great friend. I played a few solo playthroughs on my Nintendo Switch during the pandemic, but cooperative Borderlands hasn't been a thing since high school. The game really is rough around the edges. This isn't to say I didn't enjoy the game. I enjoyed it immensely. In fact, we were contemplating how to get the most out of all these Borderlands playthroughs as we push through the rest of the series in chronological order. It may be a controversial take, but I don't think the first Borderlands is the best one in the series. Like I said about Spyro, and presumably many other first games in a series, Borderlands sets a foundation for an amazing game, but like many games, a sequel really pulls the ideas together. This game has great bones, and building off of it really made it significant. I cannot wait to play Borderlands 2. And that's it. That covers the games that I have successfully rolled credits on in the last 3 months. I, of course, Had some hiccups with a couple of games throughout this quarter that should have been on here, but that's perfectly fine. I have hundreds of games in my library I still need to play. A few are bound to fall through the cracks. My goal is to roll credits on at least one more than I did this time. I don't think 4 games is bad for a functioning adult, but I'd like to get through this ever-growing list of games slightly faster than I did this time around. Small steps towards an endless goal, I suppose. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. Unlike the Let's Play videos, these are actually edited and scripted, so everything you've seen is 100% intentional. That being said, I hope it was something enjoyable to watch. Thank you.